So my guest today is Tim Woodhouse, and I am so pleased and honoured that he's agreed to do this podcast today, because most people know that this is a subject extremely close to my heart. It cuts really deep with me, and we're going to talk about Tim's report that we did regarding the link between domestic abuse and suicide. There's going to be parts of this podcast that might be disturbing to some, so we just want you to be mindful of that and take a breather if you need to do so. But yeah, I am really looking forward to speaking to you, Tim, about this. So do you want to just give us a bit of background as to why you wanted to create this report, what the report's called, and you know, everything about it, really?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation to come on. Really appreciate the chance to talk about this. So I've worked as the Suicide Prevention Programme Manager in Kent and Medway for 10 years now. And I guess over the last 4 or 5, when we've been working with Kent Police, looking at the suspected suicides that we've seen in our patch and trying to understand what was going on in people's lives before they died, domestic abuse kept on coming up. And I wasn't quite sure whether we were alone in Kent and Medway as seeing these domestic abuse-related suicides, or whether we were better than other parts of the country, or worse, or seeing more or fewer or less, whatever. And I just started to reach out to other parts of the country, both policymakers, charities, other local authority people, and nobody else was counting. Nobody else was able to tell me how many domestic abuse-related suicides they were seeing in their area, whereas I absolutely can tell you and everyone else that in Kent and Medway, domestic abuse related suicides make up about 33% of all of our suicides. That's about 250 in the last 4 or 5 years alone. So this is a really big number. Hundreds of people are dying just in Kent and Medway alone. And if you extrapolate that out nationally, I think there could be as many as 1,800 people dying every year in domestic abuse related suicides. Yeah. That includes perpetrators as well as victims. So I've got to make that point clear. Not all of those are victims. That includes perpetrators. But as perhaps we'll come on to later on in the show, that doesn't mean it's okay. Because when a perpetrator dies, they often leave behind a nightmarish legacy for their survivor as well. So, just too many people are dying. Not enough people was known about the link between DA and suicide. So that's why I wanted to start the research.
Yeah, and suicide, homicide's quite common as well, isn't it, within that? So, you know, the you know, taking their own lives after they've committed the crime of a homicide with a victim.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those shocking things. I mean, when the perpetrator takes out their family and then takes out themselves as well, it's hideous, and that it makes the news a lot more, I guess, than just the suicide on its own. And I think that's why for some people that these are known as kind of hidden deaths, because actually they often go on unnoticed, they often go uncounted, they don't often hit the headlines, although thankfully now, thanks to the real bravery and efforts of some family members, it is becoming a bit more known in the media. It is getting to trial in terms of trying to hold the perpetrator to account for whether death has been a suicide or self-inflicted. But we're still not there yet. We still don't have that real awareness.
Yeah, I think, like I said before we started recording, it cuts deep with me, this, because I get it. I 100% get it. And, you know, I've seen the cases that have been in the media, Kiana Dawes, Chloe Holland, and Jessica's case. And like you said, they'll be they're just like very few out of probably, I want to say there's a lot more, hell of a lot more than what we realise, because I want to just go back to my situation. So I was using alcohol as a coping mechanism, And I knew that was killing me slowly. I knew it was, because you don't start seeing the dangers with your liver until it's too late. And I was getting the pain, and I knew that I was. But by that point, too late, I was dependent. Now, if I'd have passed away, which I very, very nearly did, the consultant didn't know whether I was going to make it through or not. My death wouldn't have been a suicide. It would have been death through alcoholism. But, and this is what I'm saying, there are so many that turn to substance misuse as coping mechanisms, and we'll never know the true reality of it all, will we? Because they're not documented.
No, you're so right, and so sorry to hear what you've gone through. Thankfully, you made it. I'm really pleased about that. But you're right. Even the numbers in Kent and Medway are underestimates, because, as you say, there will definitely be deaths that don't go down as suicide, but there are also suicides that won't come to the attention about, given the link of domestic abuse. So yes, the police will be able to say, okay, that person's died by suicide, but actually, if that person's never reached out, if they've never made a complaint about domestic abuse, we know that domestic abuse is so drastically underreported to friends, family, organisations, and the police. So there will be people dying by suicide, and just no one has got any idea about why they've done it or that it was domestic abuse linked. So even my figure of 33% in Kent and Medway, that's definitely going to be an underestimate. We're definitely going to be seeing the true number. We'll never know, but it is definitely going to be more than that. And as I say, that already equates to 900 victims taking their own lives every year nationally, and about 1,800 in total when you add in perpetrators as well.
Shocking. But I never reported till it was too late, and I weren't at that point, weren't strong enough to press charges either. But it's kind of, I was an hairdresser, so I was very much in the public eye.
Right.
I had a lot of clients coming in and out, all really busy stylist. And it was, who do you tell? It was such a shame. I felt so ashamed because, it's not right, but then you're being told that you're useless and all the usual stuff, to the point where, my God, you start believing it. You're not fit to be a mother, and you start believing that, and your kids will be better off without you. And that's the sad reality of it, when you feel as though you can't see any other way out. I didn't know who to tell. I didn't know who would believe me. And obviously, as the alcohol started taking more of a hold on me, it were even harder for me to be able to disclose. I think that victims run a really strong risk of, when they do disclose, they're thinking, our social services going to take my children away. What can I do? Every which way you look at turning, it seems to be a brick wall. And this is why I wanted the building in town centre. It's publicly known, because I didn't know where to go and to disclose it to somebody that kind of would believe me and understand it. And we do, because we've lived it. So it's kind of like that public space that is known, where people can come, and I wanted that. At the minute, because of the way society's perception, I think, is, it's kind of like, it's still a bit of a curiosity to some people as to why we've got this massive building in Barnsley Town Centre with zero tolerance to domestic abuse on the front of it. But it's kind of like, I really do believe that it's the only way we're going to be able to get this out there, so that it's not a poster stuck behind a cubicle in a women's toilet, or a little business card it tucked away in your GP surgery. So that is why that building is there. We've got holistic therapy in there as well. So that is my perception as how I wanted to see a service being more available before it hits crisis point, basically.
And I think you're so right. And I think the thing to highlight is that actually different things will work for different people. So some people will see that business card in the GP surgery and go, yeah, I'm in a safe place at the moment. I can pick that up and I can look at it and I can hide it away in my bag. And that will be really important for them. Other people like yourself obviously benefits from the big building in Barnsley with a big sign outside and more in your face type kind of thing. And so I think it's really important that we get the messages out there in lots of different ways. So doing this podcast is brilliant. For some people who listen to this will be the thing that changes their life. For other people, it will be that business card in the GP surgery or the poster in the nightclub door, in the toilets in the nightclub or whatever. So you just got to try so many different ways, because I think you're right. And certainly the women that I spoke to for when I was putting my report together, there were kind of three different groups of victims of domestic abuse who basically ended up trying to take their own lives. And for some women, it was they are so convinced they're going to be murdered that the thought of actually having some control over the way they died was appealing to them. And that's just I mean, it's all hideous, but that's such a hideous place to be in, when you are so convinced you're going to be murdered that actually choosing to end your own life is a better alternative.
Yeah,
Then there
I
was this,
get it.
yeah, and then there was a second group who sounds a little bit like your story in terms of they just believed the perpetrator's lies and coercive control tactics of telling them that they weren't worthy of living. They were embarrassment to their family. The family hated them. The friends hated them. They didn't have any friends, real friends anyway, and the world would be a better place without them. So there was that group of women who went on to take or tried to take their own lives that I spoke to. And then there's this third group who didn't think they were going to be murdered, didn't necessarily believe the lies that they were being told, but actually they just couldn't find another way out. They just couldn't make the abuse stop. And whether that was physical abuse, sexual abuse, financial, whatever type of abuse it was, they just wanted it to stop, and they couldn't find any other way out. And so making sure that the services are visible, making sure the publicity campaigns to say, actually, this is happening, you're probably not alone, you need to reach out, there is help out there. But you're also right to say that actually some of the help that is out there at the minute needs to be reshaped, refocused. So while some people will need clinical mental health services if they're feeling suicidal, actually for other people, like the holistic services, therapy services that you've just mentioned in terms of being in your building, that is probably a better route for some people than kind of going down a formal medicalized route of antidepressants or secondary mental health services. So we've got to make sure that whatever we do, both in the publicity campaigns and in the type of support that's available, is a mix and a range so that people can work out what is best for them.
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, I can resonate with all three of those different women that are sets of women that have disclosed that. And you know, I actually ended up in crisis, and I said either I'm going to do it or he's going to do it to me, in the hope that somebody would catch me, and that wasn't the case at all. I had police there, I had crisis team, and they sent me home, and I had to pretend that none of that had happened, where I'd just broke down. And 2 days later, police came to the salon and told me to go get my children, get everything that I needed from house, and I had to go find somewhere safe while they arrested him. So for 2 days, I lived like that.
Wow.
And then it were a further 3 days before he were arrested. So there were me and my children in an hotel, absolutely petrified, high risk. We weren't allowed to tell anybody where we'd gone, and it was horrendous. And I've just done a report with Sky News that is this subject that we're talking about today. That's due to come out next week, so this podcast will come out after that report. And I want to say, knowing what I know from a personal level and knowing what I know from a professional side of it, it is what follows after a lot of the I want to say probably 70-80% of the time, it's what follows after, because you've endured all that abuse and that should be a time where you should be allowed to heal and recover, and that's not the case at all for most, and I say most victims. They're left with police that are failing them because they're not implementing protection orders. When protection orders are breached, they're not acting upon them. There's no deterrent, there's no consequence. Then they're faced with, if they've got children, they're faced with social services because they've obviously been subject to domestic abuse, so they've got the fear of that. Then they've got, if they're facing family court, that's another scenario that is hellish. And it's all these obstacles that they are faced, and they are faced with having to make these services and professionals try and believe them when they won't listen to what has actually happened to them. And where you've left, you hope and pray that somebody will catch you. They've got you, and they're going to make sure that you're all right. You're going to be safe, so that you can be free from a life of abuse. And that's not the case. And the amount of women that I have will disclose to me that they wish they'd never left because of what they've had to face afterwards is probably quite a lot of them. I want to say 60-70% of them, because it is just horrific what they're faced with. And I don't understand for life of me why the government are not listening to what is actually happening on the ground. Police see their part in it, social care see their part in it, but bear in mind, social workers get about 20 hours training within their degree on coercive control and domestic abuse. Police say that they're trained, but they're not. They're not trained to the standard that they need to be. And then family courts were still faced with family court system that is not listening to the presumption of child contact where there is domestic abuse involved. And it's court hearing after court hearing after court hearing. It is just horrendous. And you're talking years that these women are going through this. If they disclose rape, you're talking 4 to 6 years to get a conviction if you're lucky, because that's only 1 to 2% conviction rate. It's just horrendous what they have to deal with after. And for us as a service that want to try and help them so much, but our hands are tied, because when we're referring into other services or we're contacting police or trying to communicate with social care, it's heartbreaking. It is absolutely heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's really difficult out there at the moment in a lot of services. I totally get that. What my report is called 66 Ways to Reduce Domestic Abuse Related Suicides, and we pick up on a lot of the points that you've just mentioned, particularly that one around training of social care staff. I call in the report for a lot more kind of training for social care staff around domestic abuse. But of course, it's not just social care staff that needs it. It's mental health clinicians, it's GPs, it's GP receptionists, it's everyone in the health sector needs to better understand domestic abuse.
I think, Tim, that I think it needs to be mandatory in all workplaces. We've just created a training package for employees to hopefully get everybody trained in their organisations, because for me, I think everybody should have a basic standard of domestic abuse and coercive control. Everybody, it has to be everybody's business, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We know that, especially in statutory agency kind of role, it's sometimes there's no one clear agency that takes the lead. The police have their bit to do, the local authorities have their bit to do, kind of the health service have their bit to do, but no one overall takes the lead. So absolutely, it needs to be kind of part of everyone's kind of training plan, both at university time when they're going through their qualifications, but then, as you say, throughout their kind of professional development. The whole way that the society approaches domestic abuse, I think, has to change as well. It's because we are so focused, and understandably so, we are so focused on keeping victims safe from the perpetrator. Most of what you've just described already in terms of your own scenario where you were told to go and flee to a hotel, that was designed to keep you safe from the perpetrator. But I don't suppose there was very much thought about given like how is that going to impact your mental well-being? How is that impacting the mental well-being of the kids that you had to take with you? And I think as well as trying to look after the victims and keep them safe from the perpetrator, we need as a society to understand that actually more victims of domestic abuse die by suicide than are murdered by their perpetrator. So as a society, we need to start integrating kind of safety measures and suicide safety measures, as well as keeping people safe from the perpetrator. We need to keep people safe from themselves in terms of suicide and self-harm. And I think that's so hidden at the moment, and it's just not thought about enough. And I think we can start by just a couple of really simple ways. One, so in every time that we're working with a victim or a survivor of domestic abuse, we should ask them at some point, ideally quite early on, are you feeling suicidal? And have you ever made a suicide attempt in the past? Because if they say yes to either of those, then you know that's actually, they are quite likely or quite possible to still be thinking about that. And you as a professional need to do something with that information and try and take measures to keep them safe, get them mental health support, get them holistic therapy supports, and try and work out a safety plan that includes not just safety measures from keeping them safe from the perpetrator, but safety measures that keep them safe from suicide as well. Sometimes those will be the same things in terms of connecting with family, trying to hold on to work out where safe spaces are, trying to work out what's important to you as an individual to keep yourself going forward and keeping yourself alive. But I don't think it's done regularly enough at the moment. And certainly in Kent and Medway, I'm trying to work with both domestic abuse charities locally and mental health teams locally to design a domestic abuse safety plan that includes, yes, a section on keeping that individual safe from the perpetrator, but also sections on, okay, what do we need to do to keep you safe from yourself in terms of suicide and self-harm? And once we've got that, it will start becoming routine, and it will start becoming part of the everyday conversation that we have with survivors about, right, how do we keep you alive? How do we keep you safe? And that's not just the risk of homicide, as I say.
Yeah, I think that's why we needed this building in town centre, because and I do believe we should have one in every town. It's supposed to be a national crisis that we've got at minute, and for me, if we've got a national crisis, then they need to be investing more in it. And that's another reason why I wanted it there, because I thought it was only me that this was happening to at that time. And I want people to come in our building, and we being a shop at the front, charity shop at the front, that is that opportunity to come in and just browse. And they do come in and ask us questions, because more often than not, they want validation. Is this abuse? Am I being abused? Because they feel like they're going crazy, absolutely crazy. Well, I did. And, and we have some work experience that come from college. So we have the younger generation that come in and they absolutely love it. They love it. They're digging deep, and they're getting educated, and they love it. So yeah, we've got the holistic treatment room, but if we got the funding, we would ideally want EMDR, because that is the best for trauma.
Yeah.
But going back to that, like right at the beginning, it's not that I hate talking about my own case, because I've healed from it and all of that malarkey. It's just that if I use it as an example, so instead of making me and my children go flee, I had to go get them out of school, which straight away raises with other kids, teachers, two separate schools, bear in mind, that they both went to. And and then they made me go to an hotel that I had to pay for 3 days. What if I'd not got the money to pay for that? I weren't supposed to tell anybody where I'd gone. So what if we had a bit of common sense about all this and actually go and arrest the perpetrator? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it even then, I mean, I was fortunate enough to have a DVPO put in place till it got to court for a non-mol. But even that were breached and not acted upon. So it's these things that need to be implemented to truly keep victims safe. If, in my eyes, if a victim is deemed as high risk, then that surely says enough to arrest a perpetrator and lock them up, rather than making women and their kids and men, I'm not just, why are we making victims flee when, if you're deemed as high risk, why cause that further trauma? Why cause it? I had to try and keep things together for my youngest son because he were only small, so it was like I had to pretend that we were just going for a little exciting, and that is so hard considering what has just happened.
Yeah.
I was like this. I were an absolute nervous wreck. I could barely drive, never mind anything else. My friend were having to talk to me to tell me what to remember to get. Have you got the chargers? Have you got the pajamas? Have you got toothbrushes? I were literally like, what the hell is happening here?
Yeah.
Why are we putting victims in those situations? Everything's back to front.
Yeah, it's really difficult, and obviously I can't comment on individual circumstances and kind of what police. I mean, I'm not a police expert or anything, so I can't talk about the way they operate. But I think the general point in terms of the training for them and for everyone needs to improve. We need to get better at understanding kind of domestic abuse. We should be putting kind of victim safety first, and we should also be thinking not just about the victim's safety from the perpetrator, but just thinking about that impact, as we've talked about before, in terms of your mental well-being, being told to go and find your own hotel room. I mean, that sounds unusual to me, but it's not great,
Yeah.
is it? And that's where when when we're thinking about how to keep people safe from suicide, like the impact of being put into it, like refugees are so vital. They are so vital for so many women. However, they're not right for everyone, and for some people, they could, in theory, do more harm than good. If they might be keeping somebody physically safe, but actually, if you're doing such emotional damage to their well-being by taking them away from their job, their kids' schools, their friend network, their family network, that's really tough to go through, especially over an extended period of time. So surely there's got to be a better way of supporting victims and survivors in the community, ideally in their own home, ideally, as you say, making sure the perpetrator is out of the picture, and so they can't be harmed by the perpetrator. So I just think it needs a whole rethink in terms of from society, is how do we respond to domestic abuse?
Yeah, but I think that's why. Well, I know that's why we wanted to put that training into workplaces, because I think that's vital. That if you've got an understanding employer, we've come up with scenario, we've come into cases that we've got, and their employers have been amazing with them. They've given them an advance on the wages. They've understood when they've needed time off. They've listened to them and they've been empathetic. And that alone makes such a difference for a victim. Ideally, I personally think that there should be a domestic abuse policy in every single workplace, like there is health and safety posters. Because if we've got a national crisis going on, then it has to be everybody's business. And to do that, education is key. And that's why we need to keep going with this. Obviously, you've got your services like the police, social care, courts, that need more expertise training, but I think a basic training and understanding and domestic abuse policy in every single workplace has to be essential.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good point. And one of the other recommendations in my report is about ensuring that we do have kind of those broader awareness campaigns, so that your regular members of the public do understand this as an issue, and do, even if they're not being abused now, even if in the next relationship or in 5 years' time that abuse starts, people will understand it and go, oh my God, this is actually happening to me. Or actually, I don't like the way they're being treated in their new relationship. And they can have those conversations with their friends or their work colleagues or whoever it is. But it's not just adults, is it? It's also like teenagers and children. And I think we need to do better jobs in schools in teaching kids
Absolutely.
what a
Yeah.
healthy relationship is, how you should be treated, and just as importantly, how you should be treating others, and try and understand on both genders, both the boys and the girls, try and understand what a healthy relationship is and what are the consequences if you don't. If it starts becoming
Absolutely.
unhealthy.
Absolutely. I did a radio interview last week, and they're doing in Sheffield. They've started doing that in a school in Sheffield, but it should be in every single school. When you consider the consequences later on, we need to get to the next generation.
Yeah.
It's like my eldest, he's tried to take his own life a couple of times due to what happened to us. It has a massive effect on society as a whole, and it happens to 1 in 4 women. 1 in 4. So it might, like you said, it might not be happening to you now, but nobody ever knows when it could happen. And if it's not happening to you, there's chances are you will know somebody that it is or has happening to, and it's the detrimental impact it has long term on their lives. And that's the thing. It needs to be a combat. It needs to be combated as a whole, and that means everybody. And I think that's going to be the only way that we're ever going to get anywhere near getting this clamped right down on. They've got to start implementing the laws properly to protect victims.
Yeah, definitely. The police have got a massive role in this. I would also say that actually perpetrator programs. So we need to invest as a society in perpetrator programs, and that's really difficult to get decision makers and funders to invest in perpetrator programs, because quite rightly they want to be victim focused, and I totally get that. But there are some perpetrator programs out there which are shown to be effective. Not all of them are, and not all of them will be for every perpetrator, but there are some that can work. And actually, if we can change someone's behavior, we should be trying to do that, as well as looking after the safety of the victims as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the report that you've done is fantastic, just to get that awareness out there. When I read it, I can't say I was shocked, obviously, because I know, because we deal with it. But I'm sure that there are thousands of people out there that are actually shocked about those figures.
Yeah, well, I was shocked.
It was
I mean,
shocking.
I was shocked in that when I first came up with them, and that's what started me on this journey all those years ago, because I kind of was like, well, how do we compare to other parts of the country? And the fact that no one else was really counting, no one else was really looking at the link in detail, was really shocking to me, because I thought, well, surely this is such a big issue. This is happening on such a big scale. Why isn't this a national policy agenda? Why aren't politicians talking about this? Why aren't charities talking about this? Why aren't the academics in universities kind of really researching it? And of course, when you start doing a little bit of digging, there are individuals doing some great work. There are some great academics. There are some charities who are doing some good stuff. But it's nowhere near on the scale that it needs to be, given, I think, that nearly 2,000 people a year are dying in this way. It's just not as high profile as it should be, but it is changing. I think the fact that you're doing the podcast today is brilliant. The fact that kind of my report was picked up by the Metro, brilliant. The fact that you're on Sky soon, brilliant. The work that Chloe Holland's family and Mum Shannon has done to kind of get on various TV programs. I think on Loose Women, that she was featured on Loose
Yeah,
Women this week.
so brave. Yeah,
So
so
brave.
brave. Yeah, and I've spoke to Sharon, and it's, it's not something that we want to do. It's not
No.
something that it's not like a fame and glory thing. It is literally getting this out there. We've got to keep doing it. I mean, I hate having to do media, if I'm honest, because it takes forever. It takes all day.
Yeah.
And it, it's not something that I enjoy doing, having me, being exposed on national
Yeah.
media. But, and I know that Sharon's same, because she's so lovely, she's so brave, like all the mums are that have gone through this horrendous time with losing loved ones. But they keep doing it because they know how important this is to get real changes made.
Yeah.
It's, yeah.
Yeah. So it's two things, isn't it? It's getting real changes made, and it's also hopefully reaching women out there who are going through this right now to see that actually you're not alone.
Yeah.
You're not the first person to go through this, and there are ways out. There is hope. If you can take certain measures, you can turn your life around. Yes, no one
Yeah.
says it's easy. It ain't going to be easy, as you've described, but it is possible, and there is help out there. So I think it's so important that, I know doing media is not fun, but please carry on doing it, because it does
It's got to be done,
reach
hasn't
people.
it?
Yeah.
It has got to be done. And this is why I wanted to continue doing the podcasts, because, and social media, you know, the media, once the media thing goes out, it has to be then rolled out, because this ain't edited. You
No.
you might be on a news report for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whereas the podcasts, you get to hear the real raw version of what actually goes on. But yeah, it cuts deep with me, because I totally get it. I totally get it. And I think the universe wanted to keep me here to run this.
Yeah. Well,
But
I would agree wholeheartedly with the universe. Then they've got that one right.
yeah, but we've just got to keep going with it. We've just got to keep going with it, Tim. What are your plans for future then, in terms of, are you going to do more reports? Are you going to do more investigations on stuff?
Yeah. So my day job is in the suicide prevention world rather than the domestic abuse world, but I'm still going to carry on doing what I can within my day job as a suicide prevention program manager. To do, I mean, we will do a bit more research. I want to do more research into the impact of perpetrator suicide on victims and survivors, because I think that's been totally ignored for way too long. When perpetrators decide to take their own lives, as one woman told me recently, it leaves an absolute shit show for the victim and the survivor, because often the abuse just gets transferred. So the family members of the perpetrator or their friends take up the abuse and continue the abusing the victim or survivor that's left behind. And also, the victim survivor is left with their own feelings of, well, maybe it was my fault. Maybe I am to blame. Maybe I could have done things differently. Maybe their behaviour wasn't quite so bad. Maybe I shouldn't have gone to the police, and all of that. And of course, that's utter nonsense. But they're left with those feelings because they're natural, and there just aren't enough support services out there at the moment, either from a domestic abuse world or the suicide prevention bereavement services. We don't have enough expertise to help these people who are left behind in after their perpetrator dies by suicide. I think it's one of the ultimate acts of coercive control. If I'm being honest, a decision from the perpetrator to take their own life, knowing full well what emotional and potentially physical damage it will do to their victim, I think it can be described as the ultimate act of coercive control. And we just don't know enough about it yet. We need to do much more research into that. But also, I'm very action oriented. I want to do as much as I can to change the way services support women. and male victims of domestic abuse, to try and ensure that their mental health, their mental well-being is protected, as well as their physical safety from their perpetrator. And I do think there's more research to be done. I'm trying to get funding to allow me to do a PhD in this area. But to be honest, there's at least 350 PhDs waiting to be written, because there's so many different nuances that we just don't know. Like, is the suicide risk more in older victims? Is it more in younger victims? Is it more in male victims or female victims? Does it matter what type of abuse has been suffered? Like, is coercive control more risky than financial abuse or sexual assault for suicide? We just don't know yet, because no one's done that kind of research. And until we know the answers to that, we won't really know what interventions we can do to try and keep people safe.
Yeah, I can tell you from because we create care plans, and it is one of the questions on the care plan when a referral is done. And I could tell you that there's 8 out of 10 have had suicidal thoughts. And it's any age group.
Yeah.
What advice do you give to people if they are having those thoughts?
So it's really important to know what they mean by having suicidal thoughts, because it's not easy to say. I'm not belittling it at all, but it carries such a range of different feelings. So there are some people, when they say I'm feeling suicidal, will mean, oh, I just don't mind if I don't wake up tomorrow. I just need this to be over, and I don't mind if I don't wake up tomorrow. That Some people would describe that as having a suicidal thought. For other people, when they say they're suicidal, they mean they've thought about it a lot and they've got a plan. They've got a method that they've taken preparations to ensure they can carry out. They've got a time frame. They know exactly when they're going to end their own life. They know how they're going to do it, and they've taken steps with friends and family or their own arrangements to put things in order as much as they can before they die. The way professionals need to respond to those two different examples are very different. So if it's just having fleeting thoughts of, well, I don't really want to be here anymore, that's a very different kind of response needed than if you're working with the second person who's got a plan, got a time frame in mind, and is dead set on carrying it out. That is verging on an emergency response, especially if they're going to do it today or imminently. That's almost needs a blue light response. So you need to call the emergency services as soon as possible. But you need to have those follow-up conversations to know what people mean by, I'm feeling suicidal. So and until you know kind of exactly where on that scale they are, you won't know how to respond appropriately. But I mean, the simple measure is, if you're feeling like that, reach out for help in any way that's safe to do so. Obviously, with domestic abuse, it's not always safe to just ring someone up and have a conversation in your living room. But try and find ways that you can reach out for safety. So whether it's walking into your building in Barnsley, whether it is telling a GP receptionist, whether it is using one of the free phone helplines, or there's free phone text lines. So people can text anywhere in the country. It can text 85258 from their phone for free for mental health support. So even if you're going to work on the bus, you can be having kind of a conversation with a trained mental health support worker for free. It's 24 hours. So if you were in that hotel room that you talked about so eloquently, you can be having that conversation with a trained mental health worker while your kids are there, while you're in a hotel room with nothing but your phone and your charger. So please don't hesitate to reach out. It's a fantastic service. Text the word shout, or to be honest, any word, to 85258 to start that conversation.
Yeah, so important. And I think it's like talking about it to get it offload some of it off your shoulders, and it's just that dark place. But I do think talking therapy was the best for me, just to be able to talk and just offload all them years of it, and to know that it weren't me. That is what I needed to know. It weren't me.
Yeah.
And that's it. You just and that's what we find. We have a lot of victims that all they want is that validation. That validation. And do you know what else they want? An hug.
Yeah.
They just want an hug.
Yeah.
And say that tell them that everything's going to be all right, because we've got to be there for them.
Yeah, and that personal connection is so important, isn't it? And again, like we said at the start, different things are going to work for different people. So for you, maybe it was the talking therapies. For somebody else, it'll be kind of group work. For other people, it'll be recovery programs like Freedom or Phoenix, or there's a great online free one at the moment called Bloom, which you don't have to be referred to. You can just Google Bloom Domestic Abuse Recovery Service now. And there's a great load of resources online that you can work through at your own pace. But that support in your recovery journey is so important. And we know because of the money available in the system, a lot of it is concentrated at crisis point, and that it's that recovery that kind of sometimes gets missed out, and it's so important. And we've just got to try and provide that range of options to help people recover in whatever way works for them.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Tim. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Yeah, pleasure. Likewise.
I think it's been a really good podcast, and I think, you know, a lot of people will resonate with it, and hopefully they will reach out and contact services, or tell a friend, tell a family member, tell anybody, just tell anybody. But yeah, thank you so much.
Pleasure.